A Pensacola, Florida high school principal canceled an entire reading program that was centered around our next book about a teenage hacker who questions the authority of Homeland Security and fights for his basic freedoms. So here to read from Cory Doctorow's little brother is Veronica Giguere.
The important thing about security systems isn't how they work, it's how they fail. That was the first line of my first blog post on Open Revolt, my XNet site. I was writing as Mikey, M1K3Y, and I was ready to go to war. Maybe all the automatic screening is supposed to catch terrorists. Maybe it will catch a terrorist sooner or later. The problem is that it catches us too, even though we're not doing anything wrong. The more people it catches, the more brittle it gets. If it catches too many people, it dies. Get the idea? I pasted in my how-to for building an ARFID cloner and some tips for getting close enough to get people to read and write their tags. I put my own cloner in the pocket of my vintage black leather motocross jacket with the armored pockets and left for school. I managed to clone 6 tags between home and Chavez High. It was war they wanted. It was war they'd get. If you ever decide to do something as stupid as build an automatic terrorism detector, here's a math lesson you need to learn first. It's called the paradox of the false positive, and it's a doozy. Say you have a new disease called Super AIDS. Only 1 in a million people gets Super AIDS. You develop a test for Super AIDS that's 99% accurate. I mean, 99% of the time it gives the correct result. True if the subject is infected, and false if the subject is healthy. You give the test to 1 million people. 1 in a million people have Super AIDS. 1 in 100 people that you test will generate a false positive. The test will say he has Super AIDS even though he doesn't. That's what 99% accurate means. 1% wrong. What's 1% of 1 million? 1 million divided by 100 equals 10,000. 1 in a million people has Super AIDS. If you test 1 million random people, you'll probably only find 1 case of real Super AIDS. But your test won't identify 1 person as having Super AIDS. It will identify 10,000 people as having it. Your 99% accurate test will perform with 99.99% inaccuracy. That's the paradox of the false positive. When you try to find something really rare, your test's accuracy has to match the rarity of the thing you're looking for. If you're trying to point at a single pixel on your screen, a sharp pencil is a good pointer. The pencil tip is a lot smaller, more accurate than the pixels. But a pencil tip is no good at pointing at a single atom on your screen. For that, you need a pointer, a test, that's 1 atom wide or less at the tip. This is the paradox of the false positive, and here's how it applies to terrorism. Terrorists are really rare. In a city of 20 million like New York, there might be 1 or 2 terrorists, maybe 10 of them at the outside. 10 divided by 20 million equals 1/20,000th of a percent. That's pretty rare, all right. Now, say you've got some software that can sift through all the bank records, or toll pass records, or public transit records, or phone call records in the city, and catch terrorists 99% of the time. In a pool of 20 million people, a 99% accurate test will identify 200,000 people as being terrorists. But only 10 of them are terrorists. To catch 10 bad guys, you have to haul in and investigate 200,000 innocent people. Guess what? Terrorism tests aren't anywhere close to 99% accurate, more like 60% accurate, even 40% accurate sometimes. What this all meant was that the Department of Homeland Security had set itself up to fail badly. They were trying to spot incredibly rare events, a person is a terrorist, with inaccurate systems. Is it any wonder we were able to make such a mess? I stepped out the front door whistling on a Tuesday morning 1 week into the Operation False Positive. I was rocking out to some new music I downloaded from the XNet the night before. Lots of people sent Mikey little digital gifts to say thank you for giving them hope. I turned onto 23rd Street and carefully took the narrow stone steps cut into the side of the hill. As I descended, I passed Mr. Wienerdog. I don't know Mr. Wienerdog's real name, but I see him nearly every day, walking his 3 panting wiener dogs up the staircase to the little parquet. Squeezing past them all on the stairs is pretty much impossible, and I always end up tangled in the leash, knocked into someone's front garden, or perched on the bumper of one of the cars parked next to the curb. Mr. Wienerdog is clearly someone important, because he has a fancy watch and always wears a nice suit. I had mentally assumed that he worked down in the financial district. Today, as I brushed up against him, I triggered my ARFID cloner, which was already loaded in the pocket of my leather jacket. The cloner sucked down the numbers off his credit cards and his car keys, his passport, and the $100 bills in his wallet. Even as it was doing that, it was flashing some of them with new numbers, taken from other people I'd brushed against. It was like switching the license plates on a bunch of cars, but invisible and instantaneous. I smiled apologetically at Mr. Wienerdog and continued down the stairs. I stopped at 3 of the cars long enough to swap their fast-track tags with numbers taken off all the cars I'd gone past the day before. You might think I was being a little aggro here, but I was cautious and conservative compared to a lot of the ex-netters. A couple girls in the chemical engineering program at UC Berkeley had figured out how to make a harmless substance out of kitchen products that would trip an explosive sniffer. They'd had a merry time sprinkling it on their profs' briefcases and jackets, then hiding out and watching the same profs try to get into the auditoriums and libraries on campus, only to get flying tackled by the new security guards that had sprung up everywhere. Other people wanted to figure out how to dust envelopes with substances that would test positive for anthrax, but everyone else thought they were out of their minds. Luckily, it didn't seem like they'd be able to figure it out. I passed by San Francisco General Hospital and nodded with satisfaction as I saw the huge lines at the front doors. They had a police checkpoint too, of course, and there were enough ex-netters working as interns and cafeteria workers and whatnot there that everyone's badges had been snarled up and swapped around. I'd read the security checks had tacked an hour onto everyone's workday, and the unions were threatening to walk out unless the hospital did something about it. A few blocks later, I saw an even longer line for the BART. Cops were walking up and down the line, pointing people out and calling them aside for questioning, bag searches, and pat-downs. They kept getting sued for doing this, but it didn't seem to be slowing them down. I got to school a little ahead of time and decided to walk down to 22nd Street to get a coffee, and I passed a police checkpoint where they were pulling over cars for secondary inspection. School was no less wild. The security guards on the metal detectors were also wanding our school IDs and putting out students with odd movements for questioning. Needless to say, we all had pretty weird movements. Needless to say, classes were starting an hour or more later. Classes were crazy. I don't think anyone was able to concentrate. I overheard 2 teachers talking about how long it had taken them to get home from work the day before and planning to sneak out early that day. It was all I could do to keep from laughing. The paradox of the false positive strikes again. Sure enough, they let us out of class early and I headed home the long way, circling through the Mission to see the havoc. Long lines of cars, BART stations lined up around the blocks, people swearing at ATMs that wouldn't dispense their money because they'd had their accounts frozen for suspicious activity. That's the danger of wiring your checking account straight into your Fast Track and FastPass. I got home and made myself a sandwich and logged into the XNet. It had been a good day. People from all over town were crowing about their successes. We'd brought the city of San Francisco to a standstill. The news reports confirmed it. They were calling it the DHS gone haywire, blaming it all on the fake-ass security that was supposed to be protecting us from terrorism. The business section of the San Francisco Chronicle gave its whole front page to an estimate of the economic cost of the DHS security resulting from its work hours, meetings, and so on. According to the Chronicle's economist, a week of this crap would cost the city more than the Bay Bridge bombing had. Mwahaha. The best part? Dad got home that night late. Very late. 3 hours late. Why? Because he'd been pulled over, searched, questioned. Then it happened again. Twice.